When Caligula first took power, Rome erupted in joy. The crowds cheered. The Senate bowed. The empire, weary of blood, saw in him a saviour. But behind the smile was something cracked. He walked temples as a living god, dressed in gold, demanded worship, and laughed as men were tortured. He emptied the treasury on games, paraded his horse in silk, and turned Rome's dignity into a stage act. This is not just a tale of madness, but of what happens when fear replaces law and power answers to no one. Rome gave him a crown. He gave them chaos. We embark on a journey into the heart of ancient Rome, a world teetering between majesty and madness, where the scent of incense mingled with whispers of treachery. In this volatile mix was born Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, a child destined to become Caligula. Imagine the grand chambers filled with murmurs of ambition, the clinking of armour in distant barracks, all painting the backdrop of a punishing empire, where innocence was a mere veneer over the harsh realities of power. From the outset, Caligula's life was intertwined with the grandeur of Rome and the weight of familial expectations. As a child, he donned his first pair of caligae, the little soldier boots that earned him his endearing nickname. The soft leather became a symbol of the legacy he inherited, heavy with the ambitions and betrayals that haunted his lineage. Young Gaius lived in an echoing expanse of marble and intrigue, where the spectre of mortality lingered alongside visions of grandeur. To understand Caligula, we first look at his father Germanicus, a revered hero whose very name commanded loyalty and fear. Germanicus's prowess on the battlefield made him more than a soldier. He was a living embodiment of Rome's might and menace. Yet his legacy was a double-edged sword for his son, promising protection but attracting peril. Caligula witnessed firsthand the torment that can accompany acclaim, especially when admiration turns to envy. Germanicus's rumoured poisoning left an indelible impression on Caligula, a reality where every accolade carried the threat of betrayal. Raised amidst the opulence of Roman palaces and the stark rigour of military camps, Caligula's formative years were a delicate balance between contrasting worlds. In the palatial halls, he absorbed the art of statesmanship, as frescoes bore silent witness to ambitions debated in hushed tones. Meanwhile, among the legions, Caligula learned discipline and camaraderie, elements as tangible as the crackle of campfires. Such environments underscored the nature of power's dual edge, preparing him for the tumultuous path ahead. The young Caligula's world was riddled with whispers of poison and politics, a testament to the toxic nature of Roman corridors. Soft sandals glanced over stone floors as conspiracies hid in shadowy recesses, marking his childhood not with peace, but strategic foresight. The supposed murder of Germanicus was not merely a family tragedy, it was a harsh introduction to the ruthless dance of power. The air in marble atriums felt as dense with politics as it did with incense, a place where a smile could dissolve into a betrayal with a single turn. Amidst this turmoil stood Caligula's mother, Agrippina the Elder, radiating formidable strength and an unyielding resolve. For her, Gaius was more than a son. He was a vessel of hope for Rome's future. Agrippina's defiance and tactical prowess in navigating the political battlefield offered Caligula lessons of resilience and strategy. Her confrontations with figures like Sejanus revealed the dangerous ballet of Roman power, instilling in her son an understanding of strength that transcended physical might. Public executions were a grim tapestry interwoven with everyday Roman life, and Caligula was no stranger to them. Such spectacles were not mere diversions but public exhibitions of control, resonating with the populace's collective psyche. In these brutal displays where life and death intersected with dramatic finality, Caligula learned the art of manipulation, understanding the volatility of a crowd's allegiance. These were lessons in fear and power, hinting at the grim spectacles he would later champion. Critical to Caligula's understanding of power was the influence wielded by the Praetorian Guard, both protectors and potent arbiters of fate. Their loyalty served as a reminder of power's fragility, their scarlet cloaks cloaking intentions as much as armour. They taught young Gaius that alliances were often governed by expediency rather than loyalty, a revelation that presaged the betrayal by these same guards that would culminate his story in cruel irony. In this chaotic environment, Caligula's siblings shared in alliances and rivalries, all vying for favour and power within a perilous framework. Bonds of blood offered a veneer of unity, but also spun webs of ambition, each whispering the tantalising possibility of ascendancy. Through these familial interactions, Gaius learned the subtleties of influence, grasping the delicate dance of allegiance that would characterise much of his reign. Throughout his life, Caligula was captivated by the supernatural, finding in prophecies a reflection of his own perceived destiny. This belief in the divinely ordained was not mere superstition, but a framework through which he construed his rule. Such encounters with the mystical fueled his ambitions, convincing him of his preordained greatness, and paved the way for his later assertions of divinity. Caligula's childhood, marred by betrayal and intrigue, left him with insecurities disguised under a guise of bravado. The shadows of the empire loomed large over him, nurturing a blend of paranoia and cruelty. It was from this background of inherited expectations and witnessed treachery that Caligula emerged, bound to carve a legacy amid echoes of Rome's illustrious yet haunted past. His journey as a ruler would be one marked by the relentless pursuit of an empire's elusive approval and the shadows lurking within its own mythology. Arriving at the island of Capri, young Caligula entered a world of juxtapositions. Azure seas and lush vegetation framed what appeared to be paradise, but beneath this serene facade lay an island consumed by suspicion and cruelty. As he disembarked, the cautious eyes of Emperor Tiberius's entourage met him. Here, Caligula was both protected and scrutinized in equal measure by an emperor notorious for his paranoia. The island was a gilded cage, a picturesque prison, masking potential dangers, demanding Caligula swiftly adapt or perish. In this setting, the boy learned survival's harsh art, a stark contrast to his earlier life, animated by family warmth and heroic dreams inspired by his father Germanicus. Life became a calculated dance of diplomacy. Caligula quickly mastered the art of not appearing threatening, aware that even a whisper of defiance could seal his fate. Surrounded by conspiratorial whispers and Tiberius's decadent excess, he gleaned invaluable lessons on Rome's treacherous politics, lessons that would later serve him well. Life under Tiberius's rule was anything but ordinary. Capri, seen by many as a lair of tyranny, was a place perpetually poisoned by fear. The island's natural beauty lay overshadowed by Tiberius, a ruler obsessed with absolute control, forever wary of threats. Even as a boy, Caligula was plunged into the eye of this storm, witnessing firsthand how Tiberius wielded fear as both weapon and shield. Executions were routine, eliminating rivals and instilling dread among potential opponents. Yet Tiberius was a puzzle to Caligula, a tyrant who unwittingly became a teacher. Beneath Tiberius's cruelty lay lessons on power's allure and the isolation it brings. Perhaps unwittingly, Tiberius imparted to Caligula the fine line between respect and fear. These early observations inform Caligula's future reign, blending Tiberius's tactical mind with a volatile spark, unlike the heroism of Germanicus. Caligula's education on Capri became a treacherous apprenticeship in power and paranoia. His interactions with Tiberius were fraught with tension, ingraining in him power's precariousness. Tiberius's paranoia manifested in dark councils, where friends were suspected conspirators and loyalty equaled suspicion. Caligula learned to survive in this world by feigning loyalty and strategic invisibility, never admiring but never threatening the emperor's supremacy. He witnessed many cautionary tales in Capri's whispering corridors. Those who mishandled the emperor's webs often disappeared, obscure names spoken only in hushed tones. Here, Caligula honed the art of political manoeuvring, mastering concealed stances, an observer amassing ambitions for the reign he would one day command. Caligula understood the necessity of wearing a mask, a facade of innocence and meekness. Adopting a compliant front to appease Tiberius, Caligula hid his true thoughts. This survival tactic allowed him to endure the emperor's mood swings and purges. Beneath this placid exterior, his mind teemed with plans and calculations, waiting for the right moment to unfurl his vision of power. Publicly the dutiful ward, secretly Caligula yearned for a reign wherein fear maintained an empire's unity. Each decadent feast, each execution he saw stoked his inner crucible, perspiring him to recreate these lessons of power. Capri's oppressive opulence built his will, forging a character ready to astonish Rome with imperial audacity. Family still haunted Caligula. Germanicus's legacy painted an idealistic contrast to Capri's grim realities. Tales of his father's valour inspired Caligula's secret aspirations, while his mother, Agrippina's tragic fate, highlighted Tiberius's savagery. Her eventual downfall scarred Caligula, underscoring the emperor's mercilessness. The blending of familial triumphs and betrayals shaped Caligula's complex views on justice and revenge, influencing his driven path to forge a legacy transcending mere birthright and personal retribution. Corruption was palpable in Capri, its rot unmistakable to Caligula. Tiberius's rule blurred boundaries between virtue and vice, revealing depravity's depths. Dreams of power limitless, cruelty unchecked embarrassed Capri's elite. Caligula watched with silent fascination as decadence eroded decency, showing human nature's manipulability by fear and indulgence. These environments taught Caligula that ruling required cunning, power reframed through personal codes of loyalty and morality. Navigating Capri's dangers honed Caligula's survival instincts. He became adept at deception, measuring every move under Tiberius's watchful eyes. Carefully assessing allies and rivals, Caligula prepared for an era when Tiberius's overbearing shadow faded. This delicate balancing act, unthreatening in appearance yet ambitiously patient, instigated his imperial dreams, fueling the tactical fire within. As Tiberius's reign waned, uncertainty pervaded Capri. The empire buzzed with speculation about Tiberius's successor. For Caligula, these were times of anticipatory uncertainty, his strategic patience undeterred by Rome's shifting tides. The opportunity to seize the throne lingered just within reach, accompanied by whispers urging caution. Yet, emboldened by family memories and desires for self-made legacy, Caligula fervently believed in his own capacity to bend Rome's destiny to his will. Tiberius's mentorship imparted profound influences on Caligula. Despite his monstrous deeds, Tiberius offered insights into power's psychology. Under his tutelage, Caligula learned trust's weakness compared to fear's reliability. Drawing from Tiberius's rule, Caligula gleaned lessons of control, marked by a precarious balance between order and chaos. Ready. Embracing the mantle of power, Caligula emerged from Capri, shaped by the island's twisted crucible, dark apprenticeship promising Rome's dramatic upheaval. News of Tiberius's death swept through Rome with the urgency of a long-awaited omen, igniting the city with whispers of change. The oppressive reign of Tiberius, tainted by incessant paranoia and bloody executions, was finally at an end. Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, affectionately known as Caligula, stood on the threshold of power. Born into the esteemed Julian lineage, Caligula brought with him a promise of renewed stability and prosperity. From the bustling marketplaces to the austere Senate chambers, the Romans envisioned a leader embodying the virtues they so dearly missed, anointing him with expectations of a golden age marked by reform and recuperation. The very air in Rome crackled with electric anticipation, as ancient streets pulsed with the animated discussions of citizens hopeful for brighter days. Statues of ancestors, bathed in the warm glow of torchlight, bore silent witness to the fervour of a populace yearning for redemption after years of heavy-handed rule. Caligula, the son of a revered military hero, was seen as a portend of such salvation, a figure wreathed in the mythology of his own noble bloodline. When Caligula finally entered the city, it was amidst a pageant of imperial splendour, a chariot draped in brilliant hues leading him triumphantly through throngs of jubilant Romans. His arrival transformed Rome into a grand festival, banners unfurled and streets alive with celebration. His charm and approachable demeanour quickly won the hearts of the people, setting the tone for a regime offering clemency, financial reform, and a return to the dignities crushed under Tiberius. The atmosphere pulsated with hope as the emperor vowed to ease the burdens of oppressive taxation and liberate prisoners from unjust chains. His rule in those early months was a tapestry of optimism spun from acts of public generosity and deliberate reconciliation. Yet beneath the celebrations lay the gentle stirring of discontent, a subtle current that began to ripple through the fabric of Roman society. Whispers of dissent started to echo in private gatherings, shadowy reflections of decisions slowly veering toward personal grandeur over public welfare. Traditionalists, uneasy with the growing extravagance, began to murmur as imperial resources flowed toward lavish pursuits rather than civic benefaction. Caligula's whims took on a more capricious form, diverting precious wealth toward feasts and spectacles, casting a pall over his once promising assertions of reform. Behind the marble facades of power, Caligula's palace transformed into a maze of excess. Banquets laden with exotic delicacies, walls that whispered of rampant indulgence. This opulence drew a stark contrast with the expectations of his reign. Rome's citizens, who had first looked upon him as a beacon of hope, increasingly grappled with the realization that the golden promises might be gilded illusions, serving only a privileged few. The emperor's lavish celebrations mutated from a public joy to a keener edge of disenchantment, as they threatened to suffocate the foundations of the common good beneath layers of decadent display. Within this cultural theatre bursting with contrast, peasants mingled uneasily amongst patricians, social boundaries blurred by grandiose spectacle. Caligula's grand processions and diverse entertainments painted a picture not just of prosperity, but of widening disparity. Gladiators clashed with brutal splendour, and theatrical exhibitions entertained the masses, even as their lives became a living stage, scrutinised and shaped by the emperor's capricious gaze. While Rome dazzled with the theatrics of empire, citizens began to question whether these spectacles truly elevated their collective spirit or served a more self-indulgent narrative. As the emperor's reign continued, contradictions embedded within its fabric deepened. Festive tributes to Rome's deities took on an unsettling duality, echoing beneath the emperor's aspirations of divine status. Bread and circuses provided the populace with the momentary relief and distraction they craved, yet the games and gladiatorial excesses often descended into unrestrained brutality, marking a chilling line between entertainment and madness. Caligula's visionary governance grew increasingly contradictory. While public debts were alleviated, new taxes preyed upon the socio-economic fabric designed to fortify his whims. Months passed, and the gilded edge of Caligula's rule began to corrode, its initial vibrance unraveling, with an unsettling unpredictability. The aura of divine presumption and fluctuating imperial direction began to infect the very corridors of power, breeding an uneasy atmosphere. Rome's senators, who once heralded his rise as a remedy to despotism, faced growing apprehension. Disillusion seeped into the cracks of their faith, tinctured by the emperor's erratic decrees and desires that veered off course from promised altruism. Secretive conspiracies took root in the shadow-dappled senatorial cloisters, a sombre reflection on euphoria transforming into trepidation. As Caligula's governance careened adrift, its narrative fraught with unpredictability, the fine line between benevolence and tyranny became ever clearer, a cautionary tale of unchecked ambition. Even amid the festive exuberance, traces of vulnerability crept across Rome's eternal visage, reminding both ruler and subjects of the tenuous bonds that anchor imperial aspiration to earthly consequence. In the autumn of 37 CE, Caligula stood at the precipice of regal promise, adored by the citizens of Rome who sang his praises. Yet, this hopeful landscape swiftly darkened when an unrelenting fever seized him, an invisible assailant that drained his vigour and resilience. Whispers spread through Rome. Was this a curse, retribution from the gods, or a sinister act of poison cloaked in the guise of illness? The Roman doctors, constrained by a blend of superstition and rudimentary knowledge, could only watch helplessly as their treatments failed to defeat the ailment. The city stood paralysed, collective breaths held, as offerings flooded temples in desperate pleas for divine intervention. Amid this crescendo of anxiety, the fever finally relented, leaving a physically weakened Caligula. But a more profound transformation had taken root within him. Emerging from the shadow of his sickbed, Caligula appeared changed, a man whose eyes now carried an unsettling vacancy fringed with manic intensity. His demeanour had shifted, warmth had ceded place to a stinging sharpness, and the laughter that once brightened his presence had vanished. Rumours spread among his retinue of this newfound darkness, a crack perhaps signifying the first intrigue of madness. He spent endless hours adrift in thought, murmuring of divine communications received in fever's dreams. This signalled the early stages of a spiralling paranoia, as Caligula sought to root out conspiracies he believed lurked in every shadow. His once compassionate ruling took a cruel turn. executions became a twisted form of entertainment that reflected his rattled mind and spectacular sense of divine right. With a growing conviction of his godhood, Caligula's proclamations became brazen. He fashioned himself not merely an emperor, but a living deity, deserving of worship and statues while still among the living, a daring departure even among Rome's storied line of rulers. His demands for divine homage stirred disquiet, yet many in the Senate capitulated, caught in the tempest of his unpredictable reign. Statues crafted in his likeness began to populate temples, a deliberate challenge to the established pantheon of gods, marking an emperor whose grasp on reality grew increasingly tenuous. His life became an oscillating theatre of spectacle and fear, as monthly audiences alternated between majestic displays of power and chilling pronouncements of his divine perception. As Caligula conferred blessings upon his own divinity, the weight of mortal lives diminished under his gaze. The thrill of assigning death sentences transformed from grim necessity to heartless amusement. Those who displeased him, whether through perceived slights or imagined dissensions, faced arbitrary death at his whim. The Roman officials understood this new reality, where the gesture of speaking candidly could summon one's end. The public grew wary, moulding lives within the erratic shadow of Caligula's rule. His erratic policies and indiscriminate decrees became the stuff of nightmares, a caprice that sent ripples of fear across Roman life and governance. Under the surface of imperial grandeur, Rome writhed in a psychological siege laid by Caligula's paranoia. Increasingly isolated, he envisioned traitors behind every corner, his world shrinking into a landscape defined by betrayal and suspicion. He commissioned spies to weave through the lives of subjects, pulling at threads of imagined rebellion. Those once trusted found themselves ensnared by webs of make-believe treachery. The court, once vibrant, now mirrored the brooding tension of a ruler teetering on the edge. Reality and delusion walked hand in hand through the Roman streets, a chilling dance orchestrated by an emperor who feared the imaginary more than reality itself. Caligula's dominance further fractured as tourniquets of anxiety pressed tighter around his psyche. Decision-making turned chaotic, his governing body a puppet theatre, playing to his dreams rather than structured reality. The Senate, reduced to a compliant chorus, could do little to counterbalance his fantastic decrees. The empire, vast yet vulnerable, became a stage for the emperor's whims, a courtly puppet show directed by Caligula's visions rather than sober statecraft. Despite the chaos, he persisted, consumed by a grandiosity that eluded grasp yet demanded reverence. Public spectacles became Caligula's chosen canvas, a realm where the ethereal met the extreme in displays meant to assert his power. Lavish games and extravagant festivals erupted across the empire, jubilation masking the gnawing anxiety of reality. While citizens marvelled at the pageantry, the unsettling undercurrent of Caligula's erratic rule lingered. These grand performances captured the emperor's celestial ambitions, layering Rome with a veneer of awe while concealing the empire's uneasy core. The emperor's visual narrative subverted the line between spectacle and governance, reinforcing his dominance through subtle terror. Amidst the vibrancy of celebrations, Caligula's decrees heralded confusion. Lavished with the glitter of authority, Rome's edicts became a mirrored gallery of an emperor's fleeting whims. Senators wrestled with incoherent mandates spawned from Caligula's mind, managing absurdity as best as they could. The people of Rome, beneath this blurred reality, endured, their perseverance testament to their resilience. The emperor's view of himself as divine sculptor of destiny manifested in mandates detached from the empire's pressing needs. His reign unfurled as a fever dream, a testament to vision, untethered from the world. Caligula's untamed ambition set Rome adrift amidst the waves of his unstable leadership. Legacy entwined with an era lost to us yet vibrantly lingering as a cautionary tale. His fervent claim to divinity, however misguided, lingered long past his demise, reminders of the flames of power left to rage unchecked. Rome, compelled to confront the shadow of its fallen ruler, inched toward a fragile renewal, each step etched with lessons rendered by a history steeped in subdued echoes, where ambition met madness, leaving imprints upon the empire for ages to come. In the shadowy corridors of Rome's Senate, Caligula declared himself a living god, not in a moment of madness, but as a calculated move to blur the line between mortal and divine. The news whispered through marble halls and out into the city, where statues of Caligula quickly began to appear in temples and forums, replacing deified guardians with his own likeness. He envisioned himself as Jupiter reborn, the god wielding thunderbolts from the heavens. Those who doubted his claim vanished mysteriously, leaving the Senate kneeling before a terrifying spectacle that transformed politics into a grim masquerade. Within the palace, the whispers were louder. Courtiers, knowing that even the slightest hesitation in worship could be fatal, swiftly adapted to the emperor's divine decrees. Caligula's self-deification exploited Rome's ancient love for the divine, as his decrees morphed into divine edicts that allowed no opposition. His transformation from leader to tyrant marked a descent into madness, with demands disguised as gifts to Rome, a city now trapped in a bizarre dance between power and illusion. The streets of Rome bore the tangible presence of Caligula's divine aspirations. Statues of bronze and marble, half human and half deity, stood across the city. These effigies, meticulously crafted, symbolise sovereign power entwined with reckless despotism. Placed in temples once hallowed by endless prayers, these statues replaced sacred iconography and left a significant part of the population bewildered, even resentful. The philosophical ripples these statues caused echoed amongst both commoners and nobles, raising unsettling questions about the very nature of divinity. In Jerusalem, a city whose ancient stones whispered legends of faith, Caligula's demand to place his statue within the sacred temple incited fierce unrest. This decree clashed violently with Jewish monotheism, threatening to ignite a revolt. For the emperor, this was merely another act in his divine drama, but for the people of Jerusalem, it was a challenge to their identity, pushing them to the brink of rebellion. Even Roman envoys failed to suppress the outrage, as the clash of cultures loomed threateningly over the empire's stability. To compel loyalty, Caligula founded the cult of the emperor, forcing his subjects to venerate him not by choice, but by decree. The cult demanded worship that equaled that of the gods, binding all societal ranks in compulsory reverence. Rituals replaced civic duties, leaving senators and citizens alike entangled in a web of worship and fear. The emperor's followers were cornered into divine adoration, with public ceremonies turning into exhibitions of forced allegiance that barely concealed simmering dissent. Architecture became a tool of domination under Caligula's rule. New temples, opulent and heavy with symbolism, rose alongside those of Rome's ancient gods, reshaping the skyline with his divine ambition. These structures, dripping with gold and clad in marble, were crafted not merely to inspire awe, but to intimidate, monuments to his imagined godhood. Even as they commanded admiration, they sowed seeds of discontent, a silent resistance beneath the grandeur. Caligula's demands placed the Senate in a precarious position. Their centuries-old traditions clashed with the emperor's divine pretensions, forcing them into submissions marked not by laurel wreaths of glory but crowns of dread. Public rituals demanded their participation, their every gesture shadowed by the threat of exile or execution for defiance. With such crushing demands, whispers of rebellion found fertile soil. His empire, stretched too thin in its bid to uphold a divine facade, saw sparks of insurrection igniting in far-flung provinces. Diverse religious traditions stood stubborn against the cult's reach, their whispers of defiance rippling through Roman alleys and cobblestone streets. Local leaders grappled with pleasing the emperor's wild demands while maintaining peace, their towns and cities dangling on the edge of revolt. Public celebrations held in Caligula's name revealed an uncomfortable duality. Though styled as joyous festivities, they shackled the populace beneath veiled threats of punishment. Underneath the surface lay an intricate dance between genuine adoration and forced adulation, a play of shadows and light in public squares that reflected the populace's unease. Across Rome's sprawling provinces, Caligula's self-deification demanded cultural shifts of seismic proportions. Traditional social orders teetered under the pressure to embrace an emperor dressed in divinity, while complex alliances formed from both adherence and resistance. For many local leaders, such forced conversion was a tool for political leverage, sowing discord or loyalty depending on how the winds of power blew. In the end, Caligula's grand vision of deification unravelled amid the shadows of rebellion. His empire, woven with forced reverence and whispered rebellions, could not sustain his celestial dreams. Those tasked with maintaining order in his name ultimately chose survival over allegiance. They weighed loyalty against the emperor's untenable demands. The statues and temples endured as grotesque reminders of a ruler once feared, a god whose clay feet crumbled under the weight of his own ambition. History whispered through Roman stones left a legacy of a man caught between the mortal and divine, a tale of power's fleeting grasp. Caligula stood as a tyrant born of chaos, transforming Rome's grandeur into a cruel stage of excess and depravity. Beneath the opulent ceilings of imperial halls, his feasts morphed from displays of generosity to arenas of psychological terror. Senators attended with hearts in their throats, uncertain if the night would conclude in laughter or bloodshed. The boundaries between host and executioner blurred, leaving Roman civility in shreds. Within these glittering chambers, the emperor wove suspense and fear into political currency, showcasing that his reign meant more than ruling. It meant unraveling the core of societal norms. Laughter mingled with the cries of forced combat, where violence masqueraded as festivity. Caligula's dining halls overflowed with extravagance, yet concealed a decaying heart. Gladiators battled amidst marbles and perfumes, turning gardens into throbbing stages of brutality. Death was but a perverse indulgence, a testament to Caligula's belief that ultimate power thrived on ultimate cruelty. Here, beneath frescoes of triumphs past, cruelty became a central tenet of rule, a paradoxical reflection of a civilization in descent. Whispers of scandal and forbidden bonds hovered like ghosts. Caligula shattered societal norms with his unsettling closeness to his sisters. This incestuous alliance was as strategic as it was scandalous, revealing his contempt for tradition. Julia Drusilla, his beloved sister, stood as both companion and co-emperor, her presence illustrating the subversion of Roman morals. Their relationship, entangled in rumour and reality, reflected Caligula's dismissal of Rome's values, a dangerous new thread in the tapestry of power. For Caligula, personal ties were intertwined with imperial ambition. Drusilla's passing plunged him into public mourning, immortalising her as a deity and blurring lines between the mortal and divine. This move was both a display of grief and a proclamation of power, challenging Rome's perception of family and divinity. Caligula's liaisons with his sisters symbolised a kingdom where bloodlines and ambitions intermingled, reshaping Rome's view on leadership. His bond with Incitatus, his favoured horse, further tangled absurdity with authority. Talk of elevating Incitatus to consulship mocked Rome's political system. This seemingly whimsical act was laden with meaning, an illustration of Caligula's disdain for senatorial tradition. Incitatus's grand marble stall, laden with purple blankets, became a luxurious parody, a stark statement that questioned the very essence of leadership. Within the labyrinthine corridors of power, Caligula turned Rome into a theatre of terror. Senators treaded carefully, alliances as tenuous as the emperor's whims. Where once there was political discourse, now lay fear, as friendships crumbled beneath Caligula's orchestrations. The mighty Senate turned into actors in a grim drama, their venerable dignity a relic of the past. Caligula's tyranny thrived on this fear that reshaped loyalty and turned power into nothing more than an act of malicious performance. Feasting halls echoed with more than the clinking of goblets. They were battlegrounds for survival. Beneath silver trays and laughter were whispered threats and veiled allegiances. Caligula orchestrated these banquets with the precision of a tactician, shifting alliances like chess pieces over the lavish tables. This spectacle redefined diplomacy as survival, where the stakes were played out among shared cups and wary nods. In a bold theatrical spectacle, gladiators fought within the emperor's lush gardens. Here, where flowers bloomed, Rome confronted new paradigms of entertainment, severity intertwined with serenity. Caligula's games, blending brutality with beauty, challenged society's understanding of leisure. Each clash against green foliage was a declaration of dominance, a blending of culture with a chilling demonstration of power. Kinship, perceived as fortification, became a liability. Caligula's erratic gaze turned family ties into chessboards of threats. The emperor viewed familial bonds with suspicion. Each familial figure could conceal potential betrayal. Existence in such an atmosphere demanded a delicate waltz of loyalties. The empire watched as the mantle of kinship transformed into a harrowing gamble where trust was fragile and family a liability. Even as Caligula's cruelty marked the social sphere, it found its reflection in grand monuments that bore his legacy. Stone and mortar told tales of artistry mingled with terror, reshaping Rome's skyline into a spectacle of dominion. These edifices, crafted under his command, rivaled the sky, their shadows whispers of ambition. Caligula's buildings forged a narrative that transcended traditional declarations, serving both as personal emblems and as embodiments of an erratic reign. A reign of chaos reverberated beyond Rome's borders, affecting lands once governed by predictable order. Regions once secure under Roman oversight trembled under Caligula's capricious decrees. Foreign envoys navigated this new paradigm with caution, their actions swayed by the uncertain whims of imperial favour. Caligula's unpredictable policies unleashed a ripple of tension across provinces, a cruel spectacle that unfurled as rumour and reality intertwined. Echoes of Caligula's reign endured, casting shadows over Rome's legacy. Amidst the chaos lay lasting impressions, tales that would echo through the annals of time. Caligula was a paradox, a beacon and a warning. His story an allegory of unchecked power. His legacy, vibrant in destruction and brilliance, endured as a haunting reminder, a narrative of ambition, ruin, and the allure of madness. The once bountiful treasury of Rome echoed with emptiness under Caligula's reign of excess. His insatiable appetite for luxury, constructing opulent palaces and hosting games more extravagant than any before, drained the empire's coffers at an alarming rate. At Tiberius's death, the treasury held nearly 3 billion sesterces. Under Caligula, this wealth evaporated, leaving behind an economic void that demanded swift and severe measures to avert catastrophe. Caligula viewed these expenditures not as reckless, but as necessary symbols of his divine status. Festivities became declarations of power, where each denarius spent served to elevate his image of immortality. However, this unchecked spending stretched the empire's economic structures to breaking point. The rivers of wealth flowing from far-off emerald mines and distant fields of Gaul faltered under the strain, their tributaries diverted into the emperor's own demands for grandeur. As the public expenditure soared, Rome's financial horizon dimmed with every spectacle of indulgence. In his desperation to refill empty coffers, Caligula embraced taxation with an intensity that bordered on extortion. Marriages, lawsuits, and even daily trade became prime targets, each transaction viewed as an opportunity for imperial profit. The populace, burdened by these sundry impositions, groaned under the weight where applause had once reigned. Caligula's policies spurred widespread resentment. Previous emperors had taxed with an eye for public tolerability, often justifying harsh levies through civic projects. However, for Caligula, taxes were tools of the imperial ego, nourishing his lavish whims rather than serving the public. As each coin was extracted from the beleaguered citizens, the goodwill fostered by grandiose displays steadily eroded. Rome balanced precariously, teetering on a fragile financial tightrope spun by a ruler lost in the grandeur of self. With an unquenchable thirst for gold, Caligula devised inventive revenue streams, turning gladiatorial combat arenas into auction houses where life and death became subjects for public bidding. These macabre spectacles allowed Rome's elite to indulge their darker passions while lining the imperial treasury. Death served another financial purpose. Estates of the wealthy were seized under dubious claims, their heirs disinherited with a casual stroke of Caligula's pen. This brazen expropriation, declared a right of divine rule, reverberated through Rome's aristocracy, unraveling trust and stability within its ranks. In sapping the empire's wealth, Caligula's disdain for the Senate lay bare. Reduced to mere ceremonial fixtures, senators became passive witnesses to the emperor's unchecked ambitions. Their centuries-old role diminished to the echoes of bygone virtues. Animosity boiled beneath the surface, replacing advisory councils with clandestine galleries of resistance, yearning for a return to prudent governance. Caligula's lavish spending reached absurd heights through his vanity projects, bridges built for no reason but to walk across as a display of divine dominion over nature. These constructions pushed Roman engineering to the limits while sinking untold resources into vanity. Monuments and temples sprouted in honour of his visage, rather than the gods Rome had revered for centuries. Such superfluous splendour brought the empire dangerously close to financial ruin, establishing a stark divide between Caligula's celestial vision and the earthly plight of his struggling subjects. The emperor's financial fantasies struck hard at Rome's bustling marketplace, inflating prices and stifling trade. Merchants, crippled by the soaring tariffs imposed upon them, turned to consumers to shoulder the burden. As the cost of essential goods and simple luxuries skyrocketed, a greater chasm formed between Caligula and his subjects, whose loyalty eroded alongside their purchasing power. Where markets once hummed with plebeian gossip, an air of fiscal despair now pervaded. Merchants hesitated to transport goods taxed into redundancy, risking confiscation under imperial decree. Caligula's financial machinations threatened the beating heart of Roman commerce, undermining the foundation of its continental empire status. These economic burdens travelled far beyond Rome, unsettling provinces essential to the empire's wealth. Governors faced an impossible task, caught between maintaining local economies and satisfying Rome's unyielding demands. The provinces, long the financial bulwark of the empire, trembled under Caligula's heavy hand, their allies and native elites caught in a web of imperial neglect that inspired discontent and sowed seeds of future rebellion. While Rome teetered on the fiscal precipice, Caligula ensconced himself in opulence, bathing in perfumes rare and costly, anointed in luxuries denied to his subjects. His acts of indulgence only underscored the chasm between ruler and ruled, mocking virtues cherished by the same populace he claimed to serve. Plagued by hunger and burgeoning dissent, Rome simmered with unrest, the reverence for emperors as providential providers dwindling to dissent, and mutinous whispers poised to challenge the might of their sovereign. In the end, Caligula's relentless pursuit of wealth stirred revolts brewing within Rome's very heart. Though a godman sought prosperity through divine excess, his fiscal failings etched their mark into the fabric of imperial legacy. Even a deity, his power absolute in title, must face the truths of moderation and the tragic lessons of hubris. Through this saga of opulence and greed, Rome learned that riches won cannot replace empathy lost, and even emperors wrapped in golden fantasy remain all too human. Caligula, driven by the swirling tides of ambition and perhaps the haze of madness, fixated on the mysterious land of Britannia. To the Romans, it was a frontier cloaked in mist and tales of fierce, blue-painted warriors. For Caligula, Britannia presented an opportunity to extend Rome's reach and his own sense of divine purpose. He saw it as more than just a conquest, it was a celestial mission, a challenge to prove his favour over the gods themselves, especially Neptune, the sea's mighty deity. In a bid to cement his image as both mighty emperor and living god, Caligula's speeches to his soldiers were filled with grandiose visions, rich with imagery meant to inspire and bewilder. With ranks of veteran soldiers before him, Caligula's words danced between awe and bewilderment. Soldiers who had witnessed emperors come and go were now presented with a leader whose orders, bizarre though they seemed, were obeyed out of a blend of fear and loyalty. The journey to the far northern shores of the empire began as a march of imperial splendour, marked by displays of power and wealth. Legions marched with the disciplined clatter of armour, joined by an entourage that mirrored the riches of a vast empire. But somewhere along this strategic odyssey, the lines between reality and Caligula's fancies blurred. As the Roman forces neared the edge of the world, towns that had never seen such military pomp became unwitting hosts. Soldiers slept under the open canopy of the heavens, campfires crackling in answer to the ocean's whispering winds. Along the route, stories of the emperor's eccentric acts spread like fire through dry brush. One night, he might transform the camp into a scene of lavish feasting. On another, he purportedly inscribed his commands on the sands, only to watch them vanish with the morning tide. It became a test of loyalty for the participants, and a spectacle of opulence and oddity for the observers. Finally, standing before Neptune's boundless realm, Caligula pronounced an unusual command that would echo through history like a thunderbolt of absurdity. His legions were to gather seashells, not as spoils from a defeated enemy, but as tokens of victory over the sea itself. The soldiers, expecting the clash of battle, found themselves in a theatre of the absurd. But even in the face of such confusion, duty demanded they comply. Stooping to gather the humble shells, stoic from fear of the emperor's wrath, they executed this curious and unfathomable campaign with military precision. Amongst the seasoned ranks of Caligula's army, the reaction was a muted symphony of disbelief and quiet ridicule. Veterans who had endured the brutal skirmishes from Germania to Parthia found this mission both a stain on their honour and a surreal foray into madness. The legionnaires whispered among themselves over their meagre meals, glancing surreptitiously at each other. While the tale of the seashells unfolded into one of ridicule, it also bound those who witnessed it into a fraternity of shared bewilderment. Rome, as news travelled home, was seized by a mix of dark humour and dread. Citizens and senators alike muttered with incredulity in every forum, pondering the emperor's growing insanity. More than a spectacle of lunacy, this act became a symbol of the cracks forming in the empire's once stalwart facade. As whispers of discord threaded through banquets and clandestine gatherings, Caligula's bizarre campaign on the distant shores set the stage for future upheaval in Roman politics. The tale of Caligula's confrontation with Neptune transcended immediate absurdity, morphing over time into one of the more infamous legends of Rome's grand narrative. It served as a mirror reflecting the dangerous dance between unchecked power and human folly. Writers and philosophers embedded it into Rome's cultural lore, warning of the perils when ambition and divine pretensions intermingle, serving as a testament to the potential consequences when reality surrenders to whimsy. The story, embellished through generations, subtly blurred truth and myth, making Caligula both a figure of chaos and a tool for political devices. Historians and scholars debated for centuries, speculating on the essence of his motive. Was it sheer madness or a veiled test of loyalty and supremacy? This blurred legacy kept his memory a tantalizing enigma. Delving into his psyche, it becomes evident that Caligula's actions were perhaps the result of layers of trauma and absolute power. Raised in the shadows of betrayal, fear, and dynastic expectations, his reign stumbled unpredictably between genius and madness, leaving those under his rule both terrified and perplexed. Caligula's eccentric acts were, at times, intertwined with cunning, a theatre where reality and perception were masterfully manipulated, compelling future generations to unravel his motives. His peculiar wielding of spectacle to maintain control left indelible marks on the succession of emperors that followed, compelling them to navigate the realm of governance with wary caution. In his short reign, Caligula unmasked how the divine cloak of authority could be rent by mere human folly, forcing Rome's leaders to reconsider the foundations of their imperial power. Ultimately, standing at history's crossroads, Caligula's story beckons contemplation on the thin line separating ambition from madness. As we reflect on his reign, we find humanity mirrored back, a testament to both the towering heights and murky depths of power's peculiar allure. The reign of Caligula was spiralling into chaos, drawing Rome into a vortex of unpredictability. As the emperor's madness deepened, fear and suspicion took root among those closest to him. Senators and the Praetorian Guard, tasked with his protection, found themselves navigating the treacherous waters of his growing tyranny. Whispers of rebellion echoed through the corridors of power, as Caligula's lust for divine status and penchant for random executions pushed even his staunchest supporters to their limits. The seeds of dissent were not sown overnight. Members of the Praetorian Guard, originally the emperor's staunchest protectors, began questioning their commitment as they watched Caligula's irrationality erode the empire's foundations. The nobles of Rome, whose loyalty had been maintained through fear, secretly resented him, their unease feeding the murmurs of discontent that now permeated the guard's ranks. These whispers soon grew into a delicate yet dangerous conspiracy. This conspiracy came from unlikely quarters, driven not by republican ideals, but a desperate need for survival. At its heart was Cassius Chaerea, a seasoned officer of the guard. Known for his previous loyalty, Chaerea's disdain for Caligula's disregard for Roman traditions made him a pivotal conspirator. The conspirators were cast together by circumstance rather than camaraderie, bound by urgency and the spectre of imperial failure. They knew the price of failure was high, not just death but possibly infamy for their families. It was a fateful gamble to save an empire teetering on the brink. While the emperor indulged his delusions of grandeur, the citizens of Rome suffered. The exorbitant taxes to fund Caligula's excess left many grappling with poverty. As peasants and merchants watched their livelihoods vanish, resentment brewed. The tales of discontent spread like wildfire from the crowded baths to bustling marketplaces, whispered in hushed tones. Though the people dared not openly defy Caligula, graffiti and rumours betrayed their discontent. A city once hopeful, now shadowed by an emperor's despotic whims. The Senate, a once revered institution, found itself reduced to a mere performative entity under Caligula's thumb. Senators navigated a perilous landscape of unpredictable whims, their influence systematically eroded by an emperor who revelled in humiliation and manipulation. Public opposition was met with ridicule or worse. Some senators, however, emboldened by alliances with the disaffected guard, began considering the ultimate solution, the emperor's removal, as the only path back to sanity. Caligula's latest demands further strained this fragile equilibrium. His insistence on being worshipped as a deity exposed the depths of his delusion. The erection of statues in his image, the enforced rituals of sacrifice, they were excesses too blatant to ignore. Those surrounding Caligula recognized these acts not as eccentricities, but as dangerous signs of an empire gone awry. The conspirators, realizing the magnitude of his madness, resolved that time was running out for decisive action. The treacherous plotting demanded absolute secrecy. The conspirators met under the veil of darkness, their plans unfolding in whispers within secluded quarters. Each participant eyed the others warily, aware that any misstep could mean ruin. Cassius Chaerea, utilizing his knowledge of Caligula's affinity for drama, crafted a plan aimed at maximizing surprise and impact. While motivated by different personal grievances and ambitions, the conspirators shared a single, unwavering goal: the liberation of Rome. Chaerea emerged as a fulcrum of action within the conspiracy. Repeatedly humiliated by the emperor he once served, his grievances mirrored those of a broader disillusionment within the Guard. Aligning his duty to Rome with the conspiratorial mission, Chaerea masked his intentions with obedience, positioning himself strategically to strike when the time came. His quiet plotting played a crucial role in keeping the conspiracy under wraps until the moment arose to unveil it decisively. The Praetorian Guard's participation was pivotal. Sworn to protect the emperor, they found themselves facing the paradox of an emperor who threatened Rome's soul. Their betrayal was not made lightly. It came from a profound sense of duty to Rome itself. Discontent ran deep, manifesting in a readiness to overlook the emperor's antics and ultimately oppose him when the stakes grew too high. Their decision to enter the conspiracy was born of necessity, a chance to realign Rome with its former glory, despite the risks involved. Oblivious, wrapped in opulence and oblivion, Caligula continued his reign. He remained unperturbed in his grandiose illusions, blind to the imminent threat. Amidst public displays reminiscent of theatrical acts, his lack of awareness allowed the conspirators to bide their time. Tension masked the city under a facade of calm as the plot readied for its climax. The conspirators' every move shrouded in careful secrecy. The moment of reckoning arrived, marked by the dramatic flair characteristic of Caligula's rule. As the conspirators drew near, the air crackled with anticipation, a silent challenge to the fragile divinity Caligula believed he wielded. Within moments the deed was done. Chaerea's blade, long dormant, struck swiftly. In the shadows of the palace where he had once ruled unchallenged, Caligula fell, his pretensions of godhood crumbling with him. Rome, burdened yet liberated, bore witness to the end of an era, an empire drenched in blood, its sordid tale etched into the annals of history. The streets of Rome whispered with an air of anticipation, steeped in tales of eerie omens that gripped the city as shadows lengthened over the empire. The night sky was painted with celestial anomalies, blood-red moons and twisting meteors, treated by all as the divine warning of imminent upheaval. These signs set tongues wagging among a populace wearied by tyranny, each heart secretly harbouring hope for change, yet dreading the unsettling echoes of divine rage. Within the palace, the tension was palpable. The Emperor Caligula, though drunk on his own purported divinity, could not conceal his growing fears. Whispers of betrayal fluttered through the corridors like a chilling breeze, heightening a paranoia that had long gnawed at his sanity. These suspicions were not without foundation. The murmurs of discontent had fermented into a conspiracy, born not just of hatred, but of desperation among those closest to him, the very ones charged with his protection. Cassius Chaerea, an officer of the Praetorian Guard, emerged as the embodiment of this collective disillusionment. Years of Caligula's malicious whims and capricious executions had rubbed raw the patience of Rome's elite. In shadows and secret meetings, they wove their plot. The Palatine Games would provide the cover they needed, a jubilant facade beneath which they could strike. Caligula's downfall would be staged amidst the theatre's echoes of laughter and applause, turning a place of revelry into a grim setting for his dramatic demise. The day unfolded in January of 41 CE with an irony as thick as the clouds above, a festival teeming with life, all eyes drawn to the spectacle, while death lingered just beneath its surface. Caligula, ever the icon of imperial opulence, moved about the theatre, intoxicating in his arrogance. Amidst the joviality, an undercurrent of tension rippled through the crowded arena, an unspoken awareness simmering within those who sensed the tectonic shifts beneath the spectacle's surface sheen. As events unfolded, the plotters bent time to their will, every heartbeat aligned with the ticking momentum of destiny. Caligula, caught off guard in a deserted corridor, met his fate with a swift, brutal stroke as the conspirators unleashed their pent-up fury. Cassius Chaerea delivered the first strike, a decisive plunge that shattered the illusion of the god emperor. Daggers whispered through the air, and thus under a canopy of shadows, the life of a tyrant was snuffed out, starkly juxtaposed against the theatre's jubilant facade above. Above ground, pandemonium erupted. The Senate and Rome's nobility, long-time prisoners beneath the erratic whims of Caligula's reign, oscillated between relief and apprehension. The emperor's abrupt absence engendered a power vacuum that left the elite scrambling to restore order amidst chaos. Rumours flared unchecked, as the city braced itself against the unpredictable tides of a fledgling power structure, each change ushering in its own brand of peril and opportunity. Back in the palace, the reverberations of betrayal's final act echoed into swift and merciless deeds. Fearing the spectre of retribution from lingering loyalists, the conspirators enacted their grim duty by ending the lives of Caligula's wife, Cisonia, and their young daughter, Julia Drusilla. These brutal acts were deemed necessary to prevent any resurgence of the terror-filled legacy they had just dismantled. Despite these measures, the conspirators understood their coup was just the opening chord to a more complex symphony of change. In the aftermath, Caligula's demise carved a vivid scar upon history, a notorious legacy woven from the fabric of absolute power corrupted. Across time, he became a warning cloaked in horror and morbid fascination, a symbol of the peril in elevating mortal men to godlike pedestals. Chroniclers wove his reign into tapestries of cautionary tales, where grotesque deeds reflected on the fragility of unchecked authority. His brief but impactful existence penetrated the annals of history, prompting discussions on governance that persisted long after his fall. Among the common folk, the end of Caligula stirred mixed reactions. From disbelief to whispered celebrations, citizens reeled from the swift removal of a man who had once boasted divine essence. As stories of his reign etched themselves into the collective memory, the legends of Caligula oscillated between revulsion and dark allure. Around hearth fires, stories wove their mesmerizing threads, blending human interest with the darker shades of folklore. In Rome's corridors of power, his death necessitated swift maneuvering. Factions eager to fill the void squabbled for dominance amid newfound uncertainties. Some entertained notions of reviving the Republic, while others eyed the chaos with opportunistic gleams. Claudius, Caligula's unassuming uncle, found himself thrust into an unexpected ascendancy. A tide turned in his favour by the Praetorian Guard during the turbulent aftermath of the assassination. His emergence signalled the unpredictable eddies of Roman politics, a reminder of the fickle currents that govern the dance of imperial power. The spectre of Caligula's madness imprinted itself deeply upon his successors, seeding a lasting fear of betrayal and the tenuous nature of authority. Paranoia took root in the subsequent reigns, driving emperors to fortify their rule against treachery both real and imagined. They erected legacies shaped by the shadows of his excesses, determined to avoid the siren call that once beckoned him beyond sanity's brink. Ultimately, Caligula's narrative endures, a complex interplay of fear and fascination. A ruler whose extravagances and faults carve stories of caution on the hearts of empires. As his memory continues to shadow the annals of history, he remains a testament to the dangers of despotism. With his tale now told, we invite you to join us in exploring the countless other chapters of history. Like this video, subscribe to our channel for more captivating stories of the ancient world brought to life.